Hello, hello. Hi there, chaps. Kate Stirling here from Stirling Fit. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hello, how are you? I hope you are well. I'm just doing my quick pre-get going scan to make sure I've got all the right things going. I've got my never, never, never give up mug today by my side. Very prevalent. Is that the right word? I'm very good at using the wrong words with great bold tenacity, and but using completely the wrong word in a situation. Bit of a running joke in my family, really, that I think I'm clever and then I use a word that's not at all right. But basically, this mug this week has been a real reminder of why we should never, never, never give up. I've got some news to share that I'm not going to share on the podcast. I need to wait a little bit before sharing the news, but the news is very exciting for me. And has been a very long time in coming along. So I bet you can start racking your brains now, and you are welcome to guess or try and guess. Feel free to PM me. Some of you might have seen the news already. I'm being very cryptic, and this is cryptic. This is not the meaning behind the podcast today. But basically, never, never, never give up. And that's what's prompted me to come up with today's podcast, which is you are worth so much more than the things that you own, or your job title, or just basically materialistic things, things that are just kind of bits that we add onto life. So, the cars that we buy, the clothes that we buy, the food that we eat. What else? The houses, have I said that? The houses that we buy, all this kind of stuff that we like to have in our lives as humans, but also that kind of can be seen as a marker of success or a marker of value. And I wanted to share a little bit of a gung-ho support for your week ahead, for you to realise just how incredible you are. And I mean, this is a bit of the part of the reason I set up the podcast in the first place, really, was to kind of try and spread that energy and spread that positive message, because I didn't have that really. Like, I know obviously this podcast I do talk a lot about all the tricky times in my life, but when I was starting going through the divorce, oh my god, I just couldn't find anything positive at all. When you're in that like depth of loss or depression or grief, all of it, it's so hard to find any hope, and it's so hard to believe that life will get better. And when people used to say to me, "Time's a healer," I used to want to punch them in the face, because I didn't want time. I wanted things to happen now. And I think for me, when I was 32, and I'd had to move back in with my parents, and I'd just left drama school. I didn't really have, I did have a job, but it wasn't really a job. It wasn't the career that I wanted. And I basically kept focusing on all the things I didn't have. I felt like I'd really lost my place in the social life that I'd known my whole life with my friends was completely disrupted. So I felt like I'd lost that. I kind of, throughout my divorce, or or after the breakup of the marriage, I really turned my friends into like a currency. For me, they were the kind of value that I had left in my life, and I kind of felt like I owned my friends in a way. I wasn't very good at sharing them with my now ex-husband because he is a part, or was a part, or is a part of that social scene as well. And careful, because like I said in one of the earlier podcasts, he's not a bad person, we just didn't work out. So I don't want any messaging to be misconstrued, and likewise with my friends, they're amazing people. It's just more, I'm trying to highlight the fact that these things actually have a real profound effect. I was reading an article or a post, I think, on social media this week that said that I shared it on my stories, that ostracization, they did some studies, and ostracization has the same physical response in your body as actual pain. So you have the same response, stress response, feeling response as if you were to go through a physical trauma. And it wasn't like I was cut out. I was still invited and involved, but I just, because things had changed so much, I felt so alone and isolated and lonely and just really sad. And then that became my story and my narrative, which is why I share so much of this, because it took me so long to get out of that I really don't want anyone else to spend 5 years trying to get themselves out of a hole that is just surrounded by misery. And I do share that with trying to be as balanced as possible about the experiences that I went through, because I don't want it to come across like I'm bitter or twisted about the things that have happened, because no one did anything wrong. It was just how I was feeling in reaction to the fact that my whole life as I'd known it had completely changed. To be honest, I just got a bit jealous and greedy of having to share things. I've gone off on a massive tangent already, but it does link back into today's podcast, which is, like I said, about the fact that you are worth way more than the things that you own. Because basically, the reason I shared that story about feeling like I'd lost everything was that for me, everything was about what I had in those physical bits. So I felt like I didn't have a home anymore. I didn't have my identity. I didn't have milestones anymore. Divorce is a milestone, but it's not exactly one that you kind of shout about. Well, you do shout about. I'm obviously shouting about it, but it's not one that is kind of celebrated. Well, maybe it is. I mean, so that's another podcast for another day as well. There's a huge amount to be celebrated when you get out of a relationship that isn't right for you, or your partner at the time. That is actually something to celebrate. And I wasn't able to do that at the time, because I was so upset about the fact that the relationship hadn't worked, because, I thought I was going to be with this guy for forever. I'd written it like a Disney fairy tale. It was going to be perfect, and I was going to have kids, and we were going to have a house, and I would not have to worry about anything else for the rest of my life ever, because I was in a very comfortable situation. So, and what I've learned now, obviously, is that I don't need someone else to create that. I can create that myself. And likewise, again, this links into the whole theme behind today's podcast, is that you can create that. You are fully capable and able to be independent, whilst also working with others and taking on support when it is offered that you might need to help get you to where you want to go. And the other reason I share all this is that, for me, from the outside perspective, all I could see with my friends and then what my ex went on to kind of do with his life was that I felt like they had everything and I had nothing. They had the houses, they had the marriages, they had the babies, they had these really successful careers from what I was seeing. And obviously, what I really recognise and learn now is that no one is perfect. Like I've known that all along, but sometimes when you are really lost in your own life, it's really hard to be rational. I became very irrational. Is that a word? It is now. And was kind of almost like two characters. I would be Kate, nice Kate, rah rah rah, and then I had this other side to me. Like my friends call it, Jekyll and Hyde, which is true. I was Jekyll and Hyde. I had this like good happy side, and then which was probably a lot of pain. And when that side came out, that was just like a recipe for disaster. And often it came out when I got drunk. Basically, it would be something beyond. I would drink to the point where I didn't really have much control anymore, because I so needed that release. And then it was like the carnage ensued. And that was all because, in a way, I think I was building this narrative in my head that I just didn't have anything, which wasn't true. I had so much, but I wasn't able to connect to it. And so, and even now, because, comparison is the thief of all joy, and, we do it naturally, I think, on a subconscious level, often because of what we're exposed to on social media. So we see a snippet, for example, of someone's life, and we don't see all the tricky hard work that's going on behind the scene, whether that's with the relationship or whether that's with challenges in their jobs or challenges in the other stuff that's going on. And I think it's so easy for us to forget that, because it seems like all they have is everything on the outside point, the house, the family, the kids, the nice clothes, the successful career. And within that, there is a reminder that we choose what we what we do with our lives. So, you know, I chose to want to be an actor, and I chose to want to live a life where I was self-employed. So I can't then complain if my life isn't going how I perceived it to go, because I've got freedom in a way that other people don't, with full-time jobs and contracts and all that kind of jazz. So I think I'm sharing all of this because I think sometimes, especially, you know, I'm 36 now, I don't own any houses or anything like that. And sometimes I feel like I'm not really doing very well in my life because of that. And that's not true. And I remember saying to a friend about how I was seeing someone was buying a house, and, you know, I knew it was going to be very expensive, like, well, you know, just a lot of money. And I kind of was saying to her, oh, you know, and they're buying this house, and this is my ex-husband actually, when he bought, well, I'm assuming anyway, he's bought a house somewhere, and I just kind of placed or what's the word, contrasted my value to what he was able to buy. And she said to me, you are worth way more than a £1 million house. And I was like, oh yeah. And I forgot that was true, because so much of our society is based around these milestones, and is based around being able to buy a place, or being able to, you know, buy all these nice things, or have these career titles. But actually, the things and the energy and the way that you are with other people has way more value, and you have so much more value than the fact that your friends perhaps have bought nice houses, or they're having babies, or, you know, all these things that you or I might desperately want that we don't have. And before, the reason I shared the backstory there is that before I would have become really bitter now if, you know, for example, like when I lost a baby in March, if I hadn't had gone through all the stuff that I had gone through with being a bit weird with my friends and things like that, I wouldn't have been able to deal with the baby loss in the same way, because that would have probably prompted me to become bitter and twisted to anyone else that ever had a baby ever. Whereas now I can recognise that, yeah, okay, feelings come up, and, you know, when someone or something happens that you really want in your life and it's not happening for you at that time, yeah, of course, it's really natural and it's human to feel things that might not be particularly pleasant, whether that's jealousy or sadness or anger or a sense of that's really unfair. But it's being able to acknowledge that and then say, but actually it's really great that that's happening for that person, and I really don't want them to go through my experience, so I really hope it all works out. Because the place of bitterness is like toxic beyond belief, so toxic and so negative for you and for everyone. Everyone. Like, I think I probably had that toxic stuff just running through my veins. And likewise, you know, like I was saying before, we have our own choices, so we have our own ability to curate a life that we want to live. And that was also a reason behind starting up the podcast, was that it's not like my life is perfect, but it's just, I've really learned that you can actually do so much with your life if you believe you can, and if you follow your heart and your dreams and you don't quit, you can reach them. And yeah, of course, it's not like a fairy tale. There's going to be massive bumps in the way along the road, and there's going to be horrible things that happen. But ultimately, when you go through those times, if you're able to kind of almost distance yourself from the feelings that come up and observe those, you can use it as these huge moments of strength and growth and resilience, and becoming like so much more connected to the world that you live in a way that some people might never experience. And a friend texted me last week, and it's a great friend that I used to teach at a yoga studio in town, and I hadn't heard from her for a while. She texted me out of the blue saying how much she liked the podcast, and obviously I love a bit of an ego like rub, so that was great. But her point, or she came up with this kind of term of building strength through suffering, and I just loved that so much, because all of this links in. Because if you end up stuck in a pile where your suffering has become basically your existence, then you never realise your worth, because you're constantly comparing what other people have to what you have and who you are. And actually, it's by going through all the suffering that you build so much strength, and you have so much awareness and care for the life that you live, because you realize that actually it is short, and that anything can change in a moment, anything can shift, anything can go from amazing to awful, or vice versa, awful to incredible, just from like one small little change. And it's why I've only really started using the terms like energy and stuff like that, because I think before I was censoring myself from not wanting to seem too woo woo, but it is about that energy that you're channeling through yourself. If you're channeling positive energy about your value and your worth, you will feel like your life explodes with colour and with potential, and it doesn't then matter what on earth your friends or your exes are doing, because you're focused on your path and your channel and your life. And it's great that they've got those things, and good for them, but your life is as valuable, if not more so, because you're the one living it. And so sometimes I still have to bring my brain back, because within all of that, yeah, there are times in life where we're just frustrated by what's happening to us, whether that is the fact that you've gone through or you're going through a really tough breakup, or you've lost a baby, or someone that you love has passed away. These things can really drag you back. And I think another one is, being a man or a woman at a certain age, and if you're surrounded by friends that are in relationships and you really want to be in a relationship, that's really challenging, and that's not really spoken about because it's just not. But that's really challenging as well, and can be very hurtful. And I think it's good that we all have that consciousness about it, to be sensitive for those that might desperately want what we have. Because that's the thing as well, is that hilariously, everyone else is so busy worrying about their lives that, what you're doing doesn't really matter to anyone else, as long as you're doing it with good intentions and good values, and it's, getting you to where you want to go without hurting someone else in the process. Then why not go for it? Why not really follow your dreams? Why not really believe that you can create a life and live a life like how you want to? Because ultimately you might have friends who are really jealous of you, but they have everything to you. Like, on paper you think they have more than what you have, but really they just want your life. And we don't talk about this stuff either, because it all makes us sound a bit nuts. But inside, someone might look at your life and be like, oh my gosh, I would love to live by myself, all alone. And in your life, you're like, oh God, I hate living alone. I just want to be in a relationship and have a child, or have a dog, or, whatever it is. And it is really challenging, because obviously, like, I still have moments where I still want things that I don't have. Yeah, I want to buy a house, and yeah, I want to have a family, and I don't have those things yet. And so it's also important to not then pretend that you're okay when, if things are going a bit rubbish in your life. You are allowed to feel these really human things, and that's where journaling is so good. I was having a look through my journal that I kept when about 3 years ago, I went to Australia for a couple of months, because I've got family there, and I just needed to get out of London really and get some time by myself, and which I know is hugely privileged, and I was very lucky. I'm very lucky to have that family connection out there. But some of the things I've written in this journal, I mean, I will never share them because I sound like a 13-year-old, and some of them are not relevant because it's complicated about other people, and that's not for me to share. But writing it out is such a good way to start to get out all the stuff that you're really feeling that you can't say to anyone. So all the stuff about your mates that really annoys you, all your stuff about your family that really annoys you, all the stuff about your life that you're frustrated about. Because then what that does is it like clears all the energy away of everything that's frustrating you, and then it gives you so much space to let in really positive, great things. So then once you've done all that writing out of like everything that drives you up the wall, you can then start to write down what you would love and how you would really enjoy your life to be like, and the things you really want to bring into your life, alongside taking moments within that to like really write down what you have and who you are as a person. Like, who are you? What do you want? What are your values? What's important to you? What do you want to get out of your life? I don't think we ever really take time to think about that, especially if you've got really busy lives with kids and, busy jobs. You've got not got much time to even think about what you're going to have for dinner, let alone what you want to do with your life. But maybe this week, I'm going to give you some potential homework if you'd like to take it. Not homework, That's a really bad phrase. We're not at school. But you know what I mean? Like, if you can find, even if you do a little bit every day, to like write down all the stuff that drives you nuts that you can't say out to anyone, like all the really bad human thoughts that we have that we don't admit that we have, write them down. And then you can start to look at the things, like write down what are you dreaming about? What are you happy in your job? What would your dream job be? What would your dream lifestyle look like? Like I literally want to build a life where I can live between here and Australia. I want to build a life where I'm working, incredibly hard. I love working, but I have the freedom to create the time that I work as I want to, so that I have time to still do things in my day that I want to do. You're allowed to do that. You don't have to be like part of the treadmill of life where we just work 9 to 5. Well, it's not 9 to 5, is it? It's never 9 to 5. It's always like way earlier and way later, especially after COVID. You don't have to live a life where that's what you're doing, and then you're coming home and then you're eating dinner and then you're doing the same every day, and then you hit 60 and you're like, or even older, 80, 90, 100, 110, whatever. And you're like, oh, I never explored all those things I really wanted to do. Like, yeah, and sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it really doesn't, and you can't do everything because it's just not possible, perhaps. But what if it was? And I always think it's better to have done than to have not done and wondered what would have happened if you'd tried. I mean, obviously, that's my opinion, so you might disagree and it might be wrong. But I don't know, this week, write down all the things that drive you nuts about your life. The frustrations that you feel about friends, family, whatever it is, the stuff you don't share. And then once you've done that, whether it's the same day or another day, write down, maybe it's just 5 things that you really, maybe it's one thing that you start with, like, what's your dream job? What's your, like, if you're a mum that doesn't have much time to do something for yourself, what do you want to do in your week that is for you? If you have a really busy job that's caring for other people, perhaps, or even just a really busy job in general, what are you doing for yourself? If you live by yourself and you don't have that relationship, what do you want? Do you want a relationship? Maybe you start to kind of explore that. Maybe you start to think, what can I do to make myself feel complete without needing someone else to come into my life to do that for me? And because sometimes as well, this is where, like, we get a bit down about our lives, and then we let go of our kind of structure, and we maybe don't eat that well, and then maybe we don't sleep very well, and then maybe we drink a bit too much, and then that starts to cycle off into a whole different kind of thing. So I just wanted to remind you that you're hugely valuable, and it doesn't you have so much worth and so much value, and you don't need a house to prove that. You don't need a flash car to prove that. You don't need any of that. The power and the wealth that you have is how you affect other people, and the ripple effect that you can have on someone else's life, and how that is what you'll be remembered for, and that you totally are allowed to want to do things with your life that are different to what other people are doing. My life is completely different to what most of my social circle, or whatever you want to call it, are doing. And that's okay. And yeah, I'm like 10 years behind, I feel like sometimes, or even 20 years behind what everyone else is doing in the majority of my age. But that's fine. It's just a different way of doing it. And, it's so important that we don't feel like our lives are over if by 36 you've not got a house, or, if by 57 you've still not got a house. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. What matters is that you're doing what you want to do with your life, and you're creating your life in the way that you want to build it. You don't have to copy the society blueprint that we are not brought up. It's not from our parents. It's just from what we're surrounded by, and school and everything. I think I'm going to leave it there today. But give that a try. Write down all the things that frustrate you, and you might find that it opens a massive can of worms, and you want to start doing it every week. So get all the bitterness out. Not saying that you're bitter, obviously. And then start to write down what you want, and start to realise how much value you have in your life. That's where I always come back to that morning cup of coffee, that gratitude. Go back and listen to podcast number 2, I think it is, The Power of Gratitude and affirmation. Because all that stuff as well, like, it's a constant work, especially if you're frustrated with how your life's going at the minute. You've got to keep working on the positive stuff to keep channeling that positive energy. Just keep thinking about channeling all the good stuff through your veins. So it's like you want really good quality blood traveling through your veins, and by thinking positive things and by doing positive things for yourself, you're helping that bloodstream be really good for your body. You don't want like manky, sticky, toxic stuff running through your veins. You want that like, you want champagne running through your veins, and it's full of diamonds and, you know, whatever your favourite things are. Mine would be champagne and diamonds. I really like a sparkly diamond. Anyway, that is a thought for a different day. But yeah, so what do you want? Like, what energy do you want running through you? You know, this kind of stuff we have complete control over, and I've really learned that from that whole like time is a healer, which is an absolute bitch of a saying. Pardon my French. I absolutely hate that saying, but it's unfortunately very true. So if you're going through a bit of a clunky patch right now, just remember it does get better. It doesn't always feel like this. And I really want to help you out of that sooner than the 5 years it took me. So just keep having a great time, looking after yourselves, and start believing that you can do whatever you want with your life, because you can. I am sending you a ton of love, and I would so appreciate if you could hop onto Apple Podcasts and give me a little rate and review. That would be wonderful. Just go to How to Live a Stirling Life. Come and follow me on Instagram if you're not already. Kate Stirling 1 is my Kate Stirling page, and Get Stirling Fit is my fitness page, lifestyle page, mindset page, more than just a burpee. And that's about it really, but have a lovely week. Thank you for listening, and keep feeding ideas. What do you want me to talk about? Is there anything? Because, you know, like what? I don't know. Is there anything? Maybe it's just like, how do you do a burpee? I don't know. I'm going to go now. Have a lovely week. Take care. Bye.